bit of mashed pumpkin, I suppose. But each one of those tiny little things, that's as close in as we can get. Each one, or each grain in that little picture there can become a new mushroom. And what I'll show you here, if I just move this down a little bit, is you can see how small they are. You can see they've got much, much smaller there. Isn't that amazing? Nice colour too. Now, one of the things I was going to ask you to do for me today, because, you know, I don't think that I should have to do everything. I think you should have to do something too. And what I would like you to do is to tell me your favourite colour in the African wilderness. You may have 2 words to describe the colour. You may not use any of the primary colours. No red, no blue, no green, no yellow. No, you can use those, no orange or purple or mauve or black or white. So you can't use any of those words, but you can use 2 words to describe your favourite colour, and then you can tell us what it is. Okay? 2 words, your favourite colour out here, and what it is that gives you that colour. #SafariLive. In the meantime, Jamie Patterson, I believe, has got some, cows.
Some cows indeed, and the reflection of them staring pensively into the water. So from a mushroom to these fun guys. Ha ha ha. I cracked myself up. James has been asking for a good description of colours to describe Africa. I'm going to think of mine. But while we do, we've got some buffalo to look at, which is a really, truly lovely sight, because I've hardly seen any buffalo in the last 4 or so months. So to see these Duggar boys at Treehouse Dam. Oh, apparently we're having some streaming issues. Don't go anywhere. We'll be back with you very shortly. We're just going to take a very quick break. We've got these 2 buffalo who are still contemplating lying down in the water, which I think is an excellent idea. And if I hadn't just seen exactly what these 2 buffalo have done in the water before they lay down, I might be more tempted to join them. But as it is, I now know that that particular part of this waterhole is now a, well, let's just say it's been well fertilized. Let's put it that way. And the fish have been provided with some potential food and some nitrates as well. The buffalo settling down in their waterhole. I wanted to actually ask you all a question, but now I'm wondering whether I should, with our YouTube videos, our YouTube viewers absent. But hopefully most of you have jumped across onto the different platforms. I really want you to share screenshots of buffalo from this time last year and the buffalo now, because the difference is so, to me, so incredibly vast. I had almost forgotten just what large animals buffalo truly are when they're in their prime and when you reach the end of the rainy season like this, because these boys are in such spectacular condition. They're well fed, there's not a bone showing or sticking through their skin, and after the drought that we had last year and the serious shortage of rain and shortage of food that resulted, there's an enormous difference between the buffalo of last year and the buffalo of this year. And these, of course, are the survivors. A lot of them didn't survive, but those that have are looking magnificent. And whilst that doesn't mean that this dry season isn't going to be a tough one, it's still a pleasure to see them at least going into the dry season with something of a better or more of an advantage than we had with the buffalo last year. Of course, that has also meant that the buffalo have been largely absent from Djuma, which is why it's nice to stop and spend some time with them. Don't forget, just quickly, while I'm thinking about it, don't forget to send through your questions or your comments, or your answers perhaps to James's colour quiz on #SafariLive on Twitter. Let us know your thoughts and feelings. Come on, buddy. Your 1 pal's down. Perhaps he's a bit like, you know, you get those people when they go into swimming pools and it's getting past the stomach that's the problem. Or walking into the sea. It just takes that little bit of courage. Is that a yellow-billed oxpecker? Or could it be? It is. Yeah. It is too. How's that? Rare buffalo? Oh, and a rare yellow-billed oxpecker. Much, much less common than their red-billed cousins. That is a lovely bird for some of you to add to your bird lists. I know those of you, or quite a few of you, that have only recently discovered our live stream have been frantically working away at building up your list of birds before the migration of the various bird species started. But there we go. Here's a nice one to add to your list. A yellow-billed oxpecker. So called because it's got yellow on its bill, as opposed to just red. And you can see it sifting through the buffalo's coat, searching for any external parasites, ticks, of course, being the most common. And they will be particularly prevalent in patches like this, where the buffalo's got a bit of a skin disease. Oh, watch out, oxpecker, you might go for an unexpected swim. That oxpecker's not going to be caught out. He's far too wise to the tricks of old Duggar boys. And this is what buffalo bulls do on hot afternoons like this afternoon. Oh, I love the ripple effect. The rays of light reflecting off the water. Very handsome. Or at least as handsome as a buffalo bull can possibly be. Bonnie, good question. Bonnie would like to know, we're having a bit of a colour-themed show this afternoon. Bonnie would like to know why buffalo are so dark in colour, which is a sensible question because it's so hot out here that it is a good point to raise, since dark colours are likely to be hotter rather than lighter colours, which will be slightly cooler. You'll find that lighter coloured animals tend to stand out very vividly out here, so a darker colour is probably a more sensible option. But I'm not 100% sure why buffalo are so dark in colour. You do occasionally get the African spar. There's a suspicious amount of bubbles that just came up next to that buffalo. I think it was just a tail flick, but you never know. Bubbles popping up. Okay. Well, buffalo, this appears to be what you plan on doing for the rest of the afternoon. Don't forget, I'd love to see your screenshots of buffalo then versus now. And you must have a few gathered. Admittedly, most of the buffalo that we saw were being chomped on by the Humoras. But if you have any screenshots of buffalo from a year ago or let's say 6 months ago, please do share them on hashtag Safari Live on Twitter. It would be really nice to get a comparison now, before the animals start to lose condition once again. Mirror images. You've got matching expressions. From something very imposing, but not by any stretch of the imagination all that beautiful, let's go across to something very pretty with James.
Very unkind. I think that buffalo are very well, not necessarily beautiful, but, I wouldn't like to be described as beautiful, but I might like to be described as handsome. For example, Fergus is very handsome. He is now, yes, he is currently filming some very beautiful butterflies. It is all in the eye of the beholder, I suppose. And what a relief that is. Otherwise, some of us, of course, would never be thought of as handsome or beautiful, would we, Fergus?
No.
No. Good. So there are two butterflies, and they're known, well, quite appropriately, as maidens. I don't know why they're known as maidens. I'm not sure if they're maidenly or not. These two certainly aren't. There's nothing maidenly about this lot. This is dare we use the term? No, I'm not going to use it. I'm too nervous. They are in the process of making further butterflies, of course. And I think they're just rather spectacular. I don't know a huge amount about them, so stand by there. You keep looking at them. And what I will do is quickly look them up. Because you can hear me, and I can sort of hear you, and I know that we are having some streaming difficulties, so we can probably just spend a bit of time doing this and not worry too much about, maintaining an enormous amount of momentum. I'm confused because you know what? They're not butterflies. They're moths. How very embarrassing. I'm so embarrassed. I hope YouTube isn't working, because if Judy H was to hear me call that a butterfly, she would almost certainly tweet me until I was blue in the face. So now we're apparently going to go back towards television, of course, which is very, very exciting. 20 seconds to go back to TV, with all three viewers managing to watch us on Periscope. Here we go. 5, 4, 3. Good afternoon and welcome back again to your live safari. And we are sitting currently with some maidens. Aren't we, Fergus?
Indeed.
Yes, some beautiful maidens, everybody. Look how maidenly they are. And they are, well, they're not very not very maidenly at all. They are mating, in fact. And, I'm just trying to find out a little bit more about them in my book, which is proving quite difficult because I can't find the place where I saw them first. Oh, it's very, very tiring. Oh, here we go. J-flying moths, yes, well, we can see that, although this lot are not flying at all, are they? No. Yes, all I can see is moist grassland where they are found by day, clinging to grass stalks. That seems to be what they're doing. Probably stores plant grassland where they are found by day, clinging to grass stalks. Various kinds of maidens. That seems to be what they're doing. Hand maidens. Probably stores plant toxins to use as chemical defense. Maiden. So yes, and there are all the various kinds of maidens, of the hand maidens, or hand maidens. The maiden. And I think we're looking at that one there. The maiden. Another look at the maiden. So the least attractively named of the hand maidens. The maiden. Right, we think we're streaming. Good. I think we should have another look at the maiden. That's rather special. Then I suppose. Are we still streaming, Kirsten, or we? Right, we think we're streaming. Good, Fergus. Well, I think that's rather special. Then I suppose the other thing we should try and do. Senzo and I found today, Fergus. Over here. You can go that way if you like, past the maidens. Senzo and I found a bark spider this afternoon over here. The bark spider. Now the bark spider had built its web, and by the time you and I came back here this afternoon, the bark spider had gone. But if we look over here, light of the we can see perhaps the bridge line. We can see the remnants of the web, and I'm just going to try and see if the light of the afternoon doesn't catch the bridge line, maybe going across, because the little bark spider will be on or on the other side. the tree.
Anyway, we're going to spend a bit
Hopefully.
of time trying to find that during the course of the afternoon.
Hopefully exactly
It's a
where
little
Fergus
bit
is looking now,
difficult to spot
or
a
on the
bark
other
spider in
side.
the tree, given
Anyway,
that
we're
the
going
bark
to spend
spider
a bit of time
looks
trying to find
like a
that
tree.
during the course of the afternoon. It is a little bit difficult to
So my
spot a
earpiece
bark
has fallen
spider on a
out, but I
tree,
do know
given
that
that a
we're going
bark
to go
spider
across to Tristan,
looks
who has
like a tree.
Pompalom, that's all I heard.
And then at the back are the 3 lobes that tells us this is a leopard. Now, if you're wondering if it's male or female, this looks like a female track. It obviously can be sometimes a little bit difficult with young males, but it does look like a female track. It's a little bit too small for any of the males that we know about at the moment. So even Hosanna, Tumba, all of these guys have quite big feet already, and so this track looks like for a female. And they've been going back and forth in this area. There is a little pan that is off to our left called Gwari Pan, and we're looking there to see if they maybe went to go and have a drink, and that if they could potentially have a carcass here somewhere that they were going back and forth from water, but they didn't actually go to the water itself. The only track that we can find is a track of a wild dog, which was from yesterday, I believe. I believe the wild dogs were seen very briefly yesterday. Oh, it's a grasshopper. Careful there, Dave. And so no sign of them actually drinking, which is not the best thing. I was hoping that if they had gone to drink, then it would be a very real chance that potentially these leopards would have been around somewhere close where they had a carcass and they've come then to get water. The problem with this time of the year is that there's water everywhere, and so it means that tracking an individual or tracking leopards can be quite challenging because they don't have to go to the same place for water, and if they do have a carcass, sometimes they can just find these small little mud wallows inside of an area. But I haven't seen signs for any other leopards while we've been walking. So I know Taylor told me that she had tracks for 2 leopards, and she said it looked like a female and a male, but I haven't seen any male tracks yet. And we'll keep kind of looking and just seeing if we can't find any. But it's exciting nonetheless. It's always good to be back and be on walk and to really find leopard tracks that are from this morning. Tracking leopards has got to be one of the best things in the world to do. It's such an interesting and difficult experience that it really, really, really is one of my favorite things to do. So Fiona, sorry Kirsten, you broke up a little bit, but something about how big is around the reserve. So how good are the fences, Fiona? Well, Fiona, so in the Kruger National Park, there's a fence that runs on the western side, which is basically run by the private game reserve. So we'll stop here now, Darby. And that is basically the Sabi Sands, the Timbavati, Baluli. Those reserves have fences on their western side to be able to stop animals going into the communities, and those fences are very, 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 very good. The fences on the eastern side that go into Mozambique, not so much. All right, those are government run, and unfortunately they don't have the same funding, and the fences have become a little bit dilapidated. So on the eastern side, not so good, but on the western side, very good. But what we do have is the track for a male leopard over there, so slightly larger than the track that we saw earlier. So that is of the male that is now walking, which will be interesting to see who that is. Now I believe Jamie has a feathered friend that might take off at any second, so let's go across to Jamie before it does.
Well, the trick, of course, with feathered friends is to get them in time before they fly off. This one hasn't flown off. It's just walked behind a leadwood tree. Oh, the cool thing about this particular feathered friend is that I think it's a new species for all of you. It's a short-tailed starling. I've never seen that before. That's not actually, just for our new viewers, that's not actually a species. It's a starling. It looks like a Cape glossy starling that's lost its tail. And now, of course, we've lost the bird. So, I'm not sure which of us got the worst deal. I wonder what happened to it. Oh. Hello. Yes, sorry, we've come to look at you. That is unusual. I wonder if James or Tristan have ever seen a starling without a tail. I'm assuming, because generally speaking, because birds replace their feathers all of the time, just like human beings replace their hair, their eyebrows, their eyelashes, birds do the same thing. But when they replace their primary feathers, they usually do so one at a time, so that they never look as though they're missing portions of their flight feathers. It's obviously not stopping the starling, who's just caught something and has flown off with it. That is really, truly bizarre. I wonder what happened to it. I think I wouldn't be surprised if that wasn't a lucky escape from a predator. And then grabbing and pulling out those tail feathers. By then, well, it's gone, and it's obviously not hampering its flight. Tails generally in bird species, used for balance and for steering and sort of that fine motor coordination in terms of where they go. Trying to see if I can spot it for you again, but I think it's gone. Vanished south onto Little Gowrie. But there you go. So first for me. First time I've ever seen a starling without a tail. There's a little bird out here called a long-billed crombeck that naturally doesn't have much of a tail at all. In fact, it basically has a non-existent tail. And I'll show you a picture in a moment. I just want to aim to get onto the Twin Dams wall so we can see if there's a hippo or some birds hanging around, or maybe even some elephants having a swim. Ah, perfect. Thanks, Kirst. This is sometimes a gremlin-filled hollow, this particular area, but we seem to be holding out just fine. Here we go. And there is something that looks very much like a hippopotamus. It is a hippopotamus. Hello, hippopotamus. This is why we come to the waterholes at this time of day. This particular Twin Dams hippopotamus has become quite a regular on our live safaris. I like to think he's getting used to us coming and stopping and having a look at him every time we come past this area. He's certainly less shy. Initially, when he first moved into this waterhole... Oh, are they...
Yeah, there's two here now.
There are two.
Yeah.
Oh, that's new.
Yeah.
You see, you go away for 3 days and you lose out on all sorts of changes.
We're not too sure
If it's the same ones or different.
But
Okay.
since yesterday
Perfect.
I think there's two of them in here.
Okay, thanks, Seb. Seb tells me 2 now. Well, there we go. So I could be talking about one hippopotamus, it could be an entirely different one. Alright, boy. Okay. So much for him being more comfortable with us. It's alright, my boy. I think the presence of 2 of them, hello. I would almost go out on a limb and say we've got 2 bulls, which would be unusual. It's just their facial structure. I don't think that was just aimed at me either. They've just got slightly... The male hippo, generally speaking, have slightly more prominent bones around their skull. And got a very, almost like a man having quite a square jawline. They've got very prominent ridges on their noses. It's not all that easy to tell the difference between male and female. Is there another one in there?
That would be new.
That would be new. What is that in the middle between the 2 of them? Oh no, it might be a terrapin. A very confused, lost and alone terrapin.
Well, there.
There, yeah. Yeah.
Is it terrapin?
That...
Or the nostrils?
Was that a nostril? Is that a baby hippo? No, it's terrapin.
Yeah?
Is it?
Not sure.
No, come on. Hippo terrapin. It's a pretty easy mistake to make, everybody. I can't tell you how many times I've had guests to get confused between a terrapin and a hippopotamus. Kirsty has suggested that it's a terripo. I think a hippopotapin. A hippopotapin.
That's cute.
That's adorable. I think a hippopotapin sounds like a character out of a children's book. Once upon a time, a hippo and a terrapin loved each other very much, and it resulted in a hippopopin. What did I even say in the beginning?
Hippotapin.
Hippopopin.
Hippotapin.
I don't even know what I said. Oh dear, descending into madness. Perhaps the adopted child of our 2 hippo. No, it's definitely not a hippopotamus. It is that's a hippopotamus. That should...
This one there. Alright,
That-
what is this?
That is a terrapin. Surely that is a terrapin. If it was a hippopotamus, it would have had to have come up for air now. Now it's just bubbles. Bubbles everywhere. Now, one of these hippopotamus balls is responsible for the almost constant territorial marking along Twin Dams Road. And the way that hippos mark their territory, dominant bulls, and then females in the water as well. Females will do it when they're in the water, but it's only the males, the dominant males, when they're out on land. The way that they mark their territory is by rapidly swishing their tail from side to side whilst defecating, resulting in a spray of excrement that puts one in mind of a very popular English phrase about when the excrement hits the fan. I had to be careful how I said that there. But that's basically what hippopotamus do. And Shelley, you were wondering what would happen if a hippopotamus lost its tail? Would it still be able to mark its territory? I guess it would. I mean, injuries like that do happen, and I have actually seen quite a few hippo without a tail over time, whether it's been removed in a fight with another hippopotamus or potentially by marauding lions attempting to catch them, because that does happen to hippo every now and again. And I reckon it still could. I think obviously the sheer reach of their ability to spray dung might be a little bit hampered or impaired. No, this can't be two bulls resting on each other like that. It seems so unlikely. Unless it's two young males. But yes, I think it is entirely possible. It just probably wouldn't have quite the same effect. And all he'd do is he'd just go and defecate in the normal places, along territorial routes and along territorial boundaries. I suppose the scattering effect enhances the marking of the territory, but it's the dung itself that is the crucial part. Here we go. Obviously we got a little bit of a head shake from that hippopotamus. I wanted to just sit for a little bit, just to see. If he'd carried on, then I would have moved off, but he's comfortable now. Now, Riti, good afternoon to you, and thank you for sending through your question. Riti, you would like to know, if hippo can't swim, how do they come out of the water? They walk. They walk along the bottom, and obviously the dam gets deeper and deeper as you go in towards the center, and shallower on the way out. And they'll have regularly used access points in certain places. Now, the really truly impressive things to see is in rivers. So not in these waterholes that have been man-made and man-altered, but in rivers where you get really steep banks, and hippos have kind of cut their own paths into and out of the river pools that they like to spend their day in. And the sheer agility of these animals would astound you. They can't jump, and they certainly can't climb over particularly high things, but they can move up and down very steep banks, and they can do so with relative ease and at great speed. Now, all of those myths about if you're being chased by a hippo, run uphill or run downhill, I'm not sure they're going to work very well for you. I'm quite happy to sit here safely ensconced in the vehicle with the hippopotamus, but it's a creature that Tristan most definitely would not want to meet on foot.
So at least this one we can positively identify is not a crossbreeding animal at all, and we can safely say that it is a beautiful, elegant grasshopper. Now, I'm quite surprised to see one, because I haven't seen one for a few weeks, and I wonder if those rains that we had about a week ago would mean that these guys are going to be out a little bit and just make use of that last little bit of moisture around. But you can see wherever he's off to, he's really looking around and trying to find. Now, I'm not sure actually if it is a male or a female. They look very similar. There's no way to really tell them apart other than the wing casing, which I haven't been able to get close enough to him to actually see, because he keeps running away from us. So we really are at the extreme end of trying to keep him in frame. But it looks like it's got short little stubby wings, which would potentially mean that it is a female. Now, they are looking around, probably also for mates. I've seen a couple others as we've been sort of walking that have jumped from the grass and moved into thicker places. So I think there's a few around that they potentially could be looking for. But their sort of name comes from the colors that they have. They have these beautiful greens and blacks and orange wings, and now all of those colors are there to display to any sort of other animal that these are not tasty insects. These are not insects that one would want to eat. They are showing aposematic coloration, which means they're pretty much telling everybody that I taste very, very bad. Don't eat me. Don't even try and grab me, so that they don't get injured in any process while an animal tries to feed on it. Now, the elegant grasshopper was a welcome distraction from our leopard tracking, because so far it's not going very well at all. We've struggled to find any further tracks in the last ones that we saw. It seems like they're all kind of moving towards the boundary, which is not great for us. And talking about boundaries, I believe a lot of you have been wondering about the fences and why and whether they're in good condition because of the lions that escaped the Kruger National Park the last few days. Well, yesterday actually. So those 5 lions that got out, got out right in the southern part of the Kruger National Park, so quite far from here. And they escaped over a river called the Crocodile River. Now, there in that area, that river does flood quite a bit, and so it means that often you'll get a situation where there are fences there that get washed away in flood, and it means that we end up with a situation where there's a gap and the lions can then cross. Also, as the water starts to recede now after the summer, it's going to leave areas that are exposed that lions can then potentially cross and get through and out onto the tar road. So it is possible and does happen, and I'm sure those lions will be okay, and hopefully they will get found. I heard it was a bit of chaos out there today and lots of people rushing to go and see if they could see those lions. So hopefully the authorities get to them in time and they get picked up and put back in the park and back into safety, because it's not a safe world out there for lions outside of a park. But Darby, these are quite interesting, because if we have a look here, this is going to be a nice sort of difference between the tracks that we showed you earlier and the tracks that we have here. Now, if you have a look here, the reason why I stopped with these is because you can actually see these look quite big. If I put my hand there, it looks a lot bigger than you would think. But the interesting part about these is they show a characteristic that we seldom see on normal areas. Now, these would have been made during the rains, and when this animal came along, it would have stepped and would have really dug in with its front toes and would have left these big, deep toe impressions. But the sort of telltale sign of what this animal actually is has been left in front. Now, you see these deep holes? Now, those holes have been created by the claws of a hyena. So with the leopard tracks that we had earlier, the toes would have finished and there would have been no sign of these claws. But because of the hyena having the claws out and they don't retract or protract like a cat's claws do, they end up showing this very distinct track. And you can see it's also been made larger because of the wet substrate. It means as this animal was trotting down the road, it would have put its foot in and it would have spread and made the whole track look a lot bigger. But nice to see. I wonder if this maybe is not Gwen. This is a little bit further north of where she had her den for a while, so maybe that's where she's been hanging out. I see Herbie's circled the leopard track, which is great news. So hopefully they're still going. It seems that they're going south down the boundary at the moment, which is good for us because hopefully they're then going to cut back in and we'll be able to find them here somewhere. I'm really interested to see who this could be because it's a little bit far north for Tundi. She doesn't tend to move around this much, well, this far north. I'm just having a look here. So you can see here, this is quite interesting actually, and we might be able to do a really nice size comparison here. So careful here, Dave. Dave's about to step through. You can see here there's a big disturbance in the ground. Now this looks like an area where a leopard was lying down. So what you've got is there's the disturbance, and then you can see the tracks for this leopard. There's one track there, another track there, and a track there. So what I actually think has happened here is not that a leopard lay down. I think this is where 2 leopards have met. So potentially a female was coming down the road because they saw the tracks further back, and a male has come up and they've met together here, and this is where the male has twisted and turned. Alright, so his tracks are coming up and then he's turned. You can see how his foot gave way here and pulled back slightly, and then there's the other track that goes that way and another toes track pointing this way, and then back southwards again. So I think this is where potentially a male and female met up. Now I'm really interested to know who these two are, because this is really exciting. Maybe it could be Djuma and an unknown female. Wouldn't it be amazing if it was Karula that came back? I know she's been missing, so let's see how we go and see if we can't find anything. And while we do that, let's go back to James and see what he's up to in his tent and whether or not he's found something interesting to show you.
Oh, hello. My man unfortunately met with a sticky end. You can see he's in many pieces, and I was trying to put his muscles back together based on my own. Unfortunately, my own are proportionately about a tenth the size of these ones. And unfortunately, Byron's gone home, so we can't use, you know, his magnificent physique. I'll just have to try and do it from memory. Good. Okay, we're going to talk about colours now, but we're going to do so while we look at another colour. There we are. That is a very nice colour, I think. It's sort of lime emerald, if you like. And I thank you very much, all of you, for sending through your colours. Anna MacDougald, yes, that's your name. You said your favourite colour is matte bronze. Yeah, lots of matte bronzes coming up during the winter time. Ali, you said fascinating emerald. Yes, I quite like that too. Yeah, that sounds good. Raymond Hogenkamp, you said safari lime. I very like that very much. Quite like that. This is sort of safari lime we're looking at now. Aaron Hallis, you said tawny gold. Yes. A lion's mane, always so stunning to look at. There's lots of tawny here, actually. Linda Barnes, lion tawny. J. Luke, African gold. That's also a form of marijuana, of course. I'm not sure if you knew that or not. Emma Peters, mushroom ochre, or spore ochre. Yes, ochre is a lovely word, isn't it? Golden ochre. I quite like that too. I'm reading these, of course, because I don't have a brain that's able to remember them. And doodles, you said tawny because it represents so many of your favourite cats. So thank you very much for those. I'd quite like if you sort of kept those going throughout the afternoon, if you wouldn't mind. Looking for new colours to describe things out here, and of course with an audience of a few thousand, it's very helpful if you could all sort of help me along. That would be great, thank you. Okay, oh, Ronald is out. He's showing a little bit of a spirit today. You can see he's turning left and right, and there are terrapins coming to investigate him. Just to the right-hand side, and maybe they'll come up onto the beach during the course of the afternoon. That would be very nice. Now remember, any questions you have, hashtag Safari Live is how you get hold of us. I know we had some streaming issues to start with, and I do apologise for those, although I can categorically tell you that they were not my fault. And we were asked yesterday whether the Mara gremlins look the same as the Djuma gremlins, and I told you that they do not look the same at all. I forget exactly the facetious way in which I described them, but they're not the same. And are we having Mara today? Doesn't look like we are. There are just a few technical glitches that we are sorting out in the Mara, so hopefully later on we will be able to go there. Okay, apparently Jamie is now doing something known as bumbling along. So let's go across to here. I'm going to head out of the tent and find something in the bush.
While James goes out into the great outdoors, I thought, well, since I'm here and I'm on my way, I'm actually not really on my way anywhere, I thought I might show you what we were talking about with the hippopotamus scattering their dung. If I thought about it earlier, I probably could have showed you a nice fresh pile. This, of course, judging by how dry and, well, basically grey in colour it is not perhaps the prime example. But if I hop out, get a brief flash of my fingers there. If I hop out, if I can unplug myself, which is proving to be difficult, let me hop out and show you. Let's see. I have found hippo dung. It still smells very, very strong. I've found hippo dung that reaches easily up to this height, above my head. So their scattering effect works very, very well. This hippo didn't put as much effort into it. I'm trying to see the furthest up. I mean, it spreads all the way here. There's a bit more of the fresh stuff over here. The highest that I can see at the moment is this high. There we go. So that's still the height of my shoulder. And a hippopotamus bottom, probably around about there. No, yeah, around about there, where the exit point would be. Oh no, there's some up there. There, that's the highest point that I can find. They scatter it all over, and that's a great way of just spreading the smell that much further than it might otherwise be. And every morning, if you drive along this route, you can smell the scent of hippo dung, which I find, despite the fact that it is of course just grass, that's all it is, I find there's a slightly fishy odor to it. And I don't quite know why that is, because hippopotamus do not eat fish, as we emphasize time and time and time again. They are not carnivores, they are herbivores. They're not, how do you say it? Piscivores. Somebody who only eats fish? Yeah. They are not one of them either. So I don't know why it is, but I find there's a fishy tinge to the scent. Perhaps it's just the constant wallowing in water. Now, Lily, you want to know, how do the male hippopotamus impress the ladies? Well, by establishing themselves as the dominant male, that's half of their work done. However, a lot of the time, hippopotamus are quite like rhino. A lot of the time when the female's ready to mate, she does quite a lot of running, and she makes the male do quite a lot of chasing and courting. Sometimes even up to easily 2 weeks before she does actually mate with him, which is a great way of ensuring that another bigger, stronger, better male has a chance to come along and fight off the contender. Now, hippopotamus fights are common, so we sit with quite an artificial situation where we've got one pod and probably one dominant bull, sometimes more than one dominant bull, as long as the water hole's big enough to support them both. And it's only when you get the drought that competition becomes fierce. But I have seen many a fight, and it's not so much that the bull has to impress the lady as the bull has to chase away the competition. That's really where it comes in for him. And hippo kill each other. It doesn't always happen, of course, but there are serious fights, and hippo do occasionally die. And at the end of it all, that's one of the big reasons why they have those fearsome tusks. There's tusks that stick out at angles out of their jaw, and it's to fight. It's to fight off other hippopotamus. And the bulls, I don't know if you've ever seen this on a live safari. Certainly you haven't in my time here. In the last 2 years it hasn't happened. Not seriously. I think you probably heard it on the dam camera a few times during the drought, because I know I heard it from camp. But I don't know if you've ever seen a proper serious hippo fight on a live safari. It's terrifying. The impact that they have on each other. Ooh, there's a pretty antelope. I'm still trying to work out, I don't know how on earth you meant to decide what one color describes Africa. That's impossible. I find myself sounding like an Andrew Lloyd Webber song. Okay, he said 2. But I end up doing a sort of Joseph and his Technicolor Dreamcoat kind of description in my head. I can't pick 2. Hello, pretty things. I can describe you in 2, though. White and tan. Or is that... perhaps ochre would be a better description. There we go. Definitely. I'm so glad there wasn't a bull here, because that would really have messed up my colour scheme. Oh, they are so pretty. I don't feel like we've seen nearly enough in Nyala this year. There's a young bull, but he hasn't yet acquired the dark coat of the adult. He's still got a way to go. He's at that teenager in-between stage, where he's got the fluffy fur on his back, but he hasn't yet gone that slaty grey. Can I say that? Can I describe them as a slaty grey colour? I feel as though James is bringing out the truly, well, the thesaurus in us for a start. A colour palette. They've vanished off into the vegetation while I search for them and other creatures. Let's go across to something with hopefully many colours.
This particular one is not very many colours, but I think it is something called a Hinza blue. Now, it is not blue at all, of course, and the Hinza blue lacks much blue. But when you fold its wings, or when it folds its wings, because you can't fold its wings, of course, it is plain black and white. And that means that it is either a Hinza blue, a white pie. I so wanted it to be a white pie, but I think the white pie has different colours on the inside, or a dotted blue, which we had a few days back. But the dotted blue has got quite a lot of blue on the inside, and this one most certainly does not. It's got 2 spots on the forewings there. So we're going to keep seeing if we can't identify what is it gone. I can't believe it. So fine. Right, here we are. There is the Hinza blue. Hinza, of course, was a Xhosa chief at one stage. Not sure how. Well, he must have been into lepidoptery, I suppose, at some stage. Anyway, that is the Hinza blue there. There is the white pie. And there are the 2 forewings, and at least the above wings, and you can see they don't look very much like what we saw there above, but nor does the dotted blue, which is over there. Now, I identified one of the blues we saw the other day as a dotted blue, and I thought maybe that's what it was. And this one here, if we look here, I think that's what it was. I think it was a dotted blue. And I know it wasn't that blue inside, but it was a sort of reflective rainbowy type colour, which may have looked blue. And of course, these things are all variable, but it did have those 2 very distinctive dots on the forewings. So that's what I think it was, a dotted blue. Unfortunately, not a white pie or a Hinza blue. Blue, of course, is what we have to call it because, well, they're called blues, aren't they? Good. Come on then. Let's see what else we can find on our way to the tent. Sorry, excuse me. I have found something. It's a flower. It's a beautiful pink flower, which we're now going to place under the microscope and see if some astounding insect doesn't perhaps crawl out of it. Come with me. Do not dally outside, Fergus. Come now, man. We haven't got all day. You know, people are waiting, expecting some form of information from us. Just walk around the place as though we're on a Sunday afternoon stroll. Okay, here we go. Ooh. Very nice. Very nice. Now, I've forgotten what species of flower this is. I thought it might be an indigofera. And I thought to myself, don't say it if you're not sure, because you'll be in trouble, because you know you've been told it before. And then I thought to myself, oh, you will just have to admit to ignorance. That's what I've done. I think it's an indigofera species of some sort. Isn't that pretty? Now, if you sit with one of these things for long enough, some creature will emerge. There doesn't seem to be a great emergence of creatures from here, but there does seem to be an emergence of terrapins from the water. There, on the left-hand side, is a terrapin thinking about coming out of the water. And it was just showing signs of actual coming out of the water, but now it seems to have gone back in. Now, I have to disagree with Jamie. I don't think that looks like a hippopotamus at all. I think it was quite different, in fact. Hippo is, of course, much larger, and I think the distinctive feature, the difference between the two would be that the hippopotamus, of course, has got pinker skin than a terrapin. I mean, so otherwise, I don't know how you can confuse them, given that one has such pink skin and one doesn't. Then, the other thing is an interesting one. You were talking earlier about dark-skinned buffalo and why they should be dark-skinned. I think the reason is precisely that same for why we get dark-skinned people in Africa and in hot climates. It's because there is protection from the sun. The skin is full of melanin, That melanin will protect you from the sun. And of course, if you're a buffalo, although you do get hot, your size means that you heat up much more slowly than something our size. And so although black people will almost certainly absorb more heat into the skin than we do as white people, black people are able to resist, obviously, the sun's UV rays. And I remember my tracker and I used to have a huge laugh about this. Elvis used to sit in the front of the vehicle, and every time I'd be lathering myself at 8 o'clock in the morning with sunscreen, I'd reach over and to sort of say, "Elvis, would you like some?" And he'd chuckle and fall off the tracker seat and find it quite amusing, and because of course he didn't need it. And although there is certainly, with the hole in the ozone layer, there is an increase in melanomas, I think, and skin cancers for black people, especially in areas like Australia, where there is a larger hole above the ozone layer. In Africa, of course, the necessity for sunscreen does not exist. And that, I believe, is why so many of the animals out here have got dark skin. They've got lots of melanin, and that's very important. Now, Tristan has chosen to eschew the use of sunscreen. Instead, he has chosen to grow himself a rather impressive beard.
Well, James, I'm not sure I'm mimicking any insects, but the beard is also not very impressive. It's still at its short phase. It can get much longer than this. We need to get to something of the same sort of proportions as Zander, who's up in the Masai Mara. His beard is getting absolutely massive these days. He's got this long beard, so we'll have to ask Brent to show us that beard at some point. But I think it's getting up into winter now, so we have to grow the beard a little bit more to keep the face nice and warm in those cold winter mornings when we're on game drive. But we're still on our leopard tracks. They are still heading back and up and down. They're going now northwards again. It seems like they had a real field day, and the more we look at these tracks, the more it's becoming evident that these are definitely a mating pair of leopards. So it looks like a female and a male that have been mating. We found places where they were lying down together, and then places where they have been mating. So I'm sure that it is a male and female that are mating. Now, who that could be is anyone's guess. I suppose Tundi would be almost at that time where she could be mating now. Tumba's approaching that sort of period in his life where she'll start looking for a male. We know that Krula's been missing and could potentially be looking for a mate. So it's going to be interesting to see who exactly this is. When it comes to female leopards and mating with males, you can often find a female leopard way out of her territory. I once remember finding Krula on the Londolozi-Singita boundary, way far from here. She was in the far west, never seen her there before, and she rocked up with Tingana and was mating there. So it does happen from time to time, and we do end up with a situation where you can find females out of their territory. So it'll be very interesting. And we've been stopping every now and then just to listen, because often finding mating leopards, the best way to do it is to listen for them. They make quite a bit of noise when they mate, and at this stage it's still all very quiet. And talking about hot weather and sunscreen and all of that James was talking about, we were trying to see if we couldn't get some butterflies to show you as well, but they're all flying about too fast. We were looking around trying to see if we could get them, but with this heat they're on supercharged mode, and they're dashing about from branch to branch and grass to grass, trying to kind of find what they're looking for and find each other. So butterflies are not proving to be very easy, and other than that it's actually been quite quiet out here. I haven't heard any signs of any elephants, which is a bit of a disappointment. I was hoping to come back to elephants everywhere. I spent some time in the Kruger National Park, and there was elephants everywhere, which is a little bit further north of us. We went up and towards the Elephant and the Taba river systems, and we must have seen easily 700 to 1,000 elephants in a day. It really was quite amazing. So hopefully those elephants will all start coming down as it starts to dry out up there, and they'll head down into these areas which are still a little bit green and got some sort of life and nutrients. Dave, do you see anything? No. It's quiet up on this side. It was beautiful though. Got a beautiful view. We have this sort of left hand side here. This is where the Drakensberg mountains are. Unfortunately they're hidden by clouds, but it is really pretty. So Thomas, you're wondering about if there's any updates on Shadow and Cub. Well, I'm not sure. I haven't been around for the last few days, and I definitely haven't spent that much time sort of looking on social media, but I, to be honest, haven't heard of anything or haven't seen anything. So what I'll try and do this afternoon is try and just see if I can't reach out to some of the other guides around here and see if they've had any updates. But as far as I know, no. There hasn't been too many updates. She often spends time in an area called Hofmans, which sits south of Djuma. And that area is only traversed by Chitwa and Arathusa. And the area that she likes to spend time in there is this block up to the north, and it is full of black monkey orange, which is a type of tree that is very difficult to get a vehicle into. So you end up at growing in these huge stands, and these leopards get inside there, and it becomes really quite tough to actually find them in that. So I think that's probably where she could be, and maybe she's hiding out there, and the guides don't really want to put too much pressure on her in that area. It's just too thick and too dense, and it makes it quite difficult to actually get a vehicle there. So that's where she could be. Now we're going to carry on these leopard tracks and see what else we can find, and see if we can't find some insects that will sit still for us. And while we do that, let's go across to Jamie, who I believe is bumbling along, much like we're ambling along on foot.
I am ambling, but I'm ambling with a purpose. My purpose, or the destination at least that I have in mind, is Buffelshoek Dam. Because Tristan's not far from here on those leopard tracks, and I thought, let me just check around this area. Because if it is mating leopards, if Tristan's right about that, and they are still around, we should hear them. And generally speaking, leopards will mate all day, roughly every, if it's nice and cool, roughly every 5 or so minutes in the beginning. And then it slows down a bit as it gets warmer. But I think if we sat here and listened for a little bit, we might, if they're still around, we might get to hear them. And I'm sure that's what Tristan is doing as well, is walking, stopping and listening. My goodness, every time I come back here there's an extra hippo. Now there's 5 of them. We've got our own little Buffelshoek pod developing. Now, apparently Byron was here this morning and he had 5. Well, it's good to know we didn't lose one in the middle of the day. Would be unlikely. Hello, Hippo. What do you think, Seb? 5 terrapins? I think so. 5 terrapins. I don't know what you were being told about them being hippopotamus. That's 5 terrapins as far as I can tell. Looking deeply insulted that I've made that egregious mistake and got confused between a terrapin and a hippopotamus. Matthew, watch. In answer to your question, Matthew wants to know if it's true that hippo close their nose when they go underneath the surface of the water. Absolutely they do, so that they don't have to focus on maintaining any kind of a pressure gradient. So when you go in the water, and perhaps you go underneath the surface of the water, if you're anything like me, do somersaults whenever you can. You can either hold your nose or you can control your breath so much so that the water doesn't go up your nose. But hippo don't want to have to concentrate on doing that, so it's not just their nostrils that they close, it's their ears as well. Watch as they go underneath the surface of the water and watch their nostrils. Hey, come pop your nose up for me, please, and thank you. Thank you very much. Oh, you've been a bit scratched up. Now there, the nostrils there, right at the end of the nose, just in case you were curious. You see how they open and close instinctively? As soon as any water gets anywhere close to the edge, that movement, the ripples will be picked up by the sensitive nerves. And hippo do have very, very sensitive nerves around the nose and the mouth and their lips. And then aided by those very bristly whiskers that stick out. Of course, now all 5 of them have disappeared. Whenever I want to try and show you. Oh yes, they do close their nostrils. And hippos are so beautifully designed. There, every now and again a bit of water gets in, and they do a brisk breath out to blow out whatever's gathered along the tops of the nostrils. But you can see the muscles contracting there. And I don't know if you've ever seen one of those diagrams of human bodies drawn with different proportions according to where the nerves are concentrated. So I'm not sure if you've ever seen that. They look very strange diagrams of people with giant hands and giant faces and lips. And hippopotamus would be the same. All of those nerve cells centered around those particular places. Well, they've all vanished. They have disappeared completely beneath the surface of the water. I'm going to enjoy the view, but while I enjoy a macro view, let's go across to a micro one.
I've managed to find something very special, everybody. Here we go. It even has its own soundtrack. It is the mating butterflies, everyone. At the jazz club. Please excuse me for that. I found it thoroughly amusing. Fergus and I are crying with laughter. But it is wonderful to see them like this. And I just very, very gently picked away the grass stalk, and there you can see them. And I don't know which one's the male. I think the one with a bit of blue on the wings is the male. He's slightly larger, and that'll be the female behind him. But again, difficult to almost see whether they're the same species if you saw them without the aid of the microscope. I think this is just wonderful. They are so at rest, just because it's starting to get a little bit cooler maybe. But I'm astounded at how long this process takes. So it's not a quick process at all. In fact, I'm going to guess that I've got that wrong. I'm going to say I think it's a female on the right-hand side. And I think it's the female because I suspect that she's got to carry the eggs, and that's why perhaps her abdomen is that much larger than the male's. Isn't that wonderful? Normally with a moth you can tell because the male has got not clubbed antenna, but his antenna aren't nearly as sort of well combed as a female's. No, that's the other way around. Sorry, the male's got very well combed antenna because he picks up the pheromones that the female gives off. But these two antennae look almost precisely the same. Isn't that a wonderful picture? Oh, the most beautiful moths. And of course, when we talk about moths, most people think, well, dull brown thing that gets in my head when I'm snoozing or walking around at night. But these, of course, are diurnal, and therefore they're much more brightly coloured. I think that's just gorgeous. Right, I'm going to put them back. And while I do that, I would suggest that you have a look at Ronald. He's making more friends. He's takes a little bit of time to make friends, clearly, but you can see everything there getting up and out of the water as things start to cool down. The terrapins, of course, having to regulate their body temperatures, and so they'll be in and out of the water consistently throughout the course of the day. And there they are now, coming out just to warm up before it gets too cold, before the evening truly sets in. I have replaced the butterflies back outside, and they may now have some privacy without the advent of or the advantage, perhaps, of my slightly sick sense of humour. Now, let us try and investigate what else is going on at this waterhole. We have the terrapins. There are thousands and thousands of terrapins, and there you can see the dam cam view now. We've got impala and nyalas. And I would tell you what, I love coming to sit down at the dam in the afternoons because there's always something going on. You get the nyalas and impalas that come past, often baboons, often you'll get buffalo and elephant wandering down towards here. And then, of course, as the evening starts to fall, so the smell of, especially this time of year, sort of going into early winter, that first sort of touch of dry grass and dust starts to touch your nostrils as the temperature goes down, and I just think it's a beautiful time of the day and a beautiful time of the year. Of course, most times of the year are quite beautiful here. Let's head back to the serrated hinged terrapins if we can, because the one on the left is doing yoga. You see that far left one just kicking his flipper out and doing some yoga there? And he's stopped now, of course, because he doesn't want to do his yoga on television without being paid for it. He hasn't signed a release form, unfortunately. And I'm sure the others will eventually come out onto the beach. Jill, there he is. He's doing it now. Now, one day, of course, we will be able to zoom the camera on Ronald, and we'll be able to zoom in completely silently, so he won't know that we're watching him do his yoga. But I think during the course of the afternoon, all the others will come up onto the beach, and so we'll keep an eye on Ronald, and if we're very lucky, that water monitor will come past. There's a question coming through from an unknown anonymous viewer about whether or not Ronald has his own Facebook page. This is a person called Connor. I'm not sure if it's a different Connor. Okay, it's not our Connor. He wants to know if Ronald has a Facebook page. Connor, no, I don't think Ronald has a Facebook page. I haven't asked him, and I haven't searched for him. He's quite private, so if he does have a Facebook page, you probably wouldn't be able to find him. He's probably a very private profile. Just a few select groups of friends, for example, Timothy and Thomas over there, the two terrapins there, I know are his Facebook friends. He has a Twitter profile, but not under his own name, it's under a pseudonym where he makes sophisticated political commentary, and so it's difficult to find him on social media. All right, Tristan is apparently approaching some water. Which water it is, I'm not really sure.
Well, we have approached water, James, and we'll try and let you guess, or see if anybody else can have a guess as to where we are on #SafariLive. And we thought because it's quite a warm afternoon, there would be no better place for a pair of leopards to spend the day watching the sun going by than to be at a waterhole. So we're going to check around here and see what we can find. And there's a beautiful drainage line that comes into the waterhole, and so maybe they're lying up in the nice cool sand that could be a little bit moist from the water that we've had flow into this dam over the last little bit. Other than that, it's always good to be around waterholes. You never know what else you can find. It's this time of the day where you'll get things like elephants and buffalo and varying other types of animals that will come down and drink. So it'll be a perfect place to look around. And like I say, when we go into this riverbed system, it's going to be so pretty inside there, and with the sun, a late afternoon sun at our backs, it should be a wonderful place to walk. So I think that's where we're going to head off into and try and see what else we can discover and find and notice in amongst these thickets. But as we're going, it's always good to look into areas like this. You can see there's quite a bit of mud around me, and mud is the best place to look for tracks. It's really, really easy to see them. You can see there was some elephants here that made some really big, deep moon craters, but there are also places where there's soft mud that a leopard's paw prints would definitely show up. Now, keep on going along and see what else there is. There's a few hippos in the distance. Right, we're going to take a short break, and while we carry on tracking these elusive spotted cats, we'll see you all in a little bit. Right, so that was our ad break for Practice for TV shows. So we're back live, we're back doing our thing. For those of you who are new viewers, we don't actually go on to an ad break. Crystal, you said Buffelshoek Dam. Well done, Crystal. We are indeed at Buffelshoek Dam. It is really, really beautiful at this time of the day. Now, Dave, I don't know if you can get that, but there's a hippo that is busy snorting. Oh, he's just gone underwater now. But let's see, because it's beautiful where we are now. It's backlighting this hippo, which is a different sort of shot than we normally get from Buffelshoek Dam, because we're normally on the dam wall, and the light is a little bit different. But as he was coming up and blowing air, all that moisture was being lit by the golden rays of the sun, and it looked very, very pretty. Now, of course, it's going to be a naughty hippo and probably stay underwater, and we're not going to see anything of it, which is just our luck this afternoon so far, but You never know, maybe he'll pop up. What do you think, Dave? Maybe. I reckon it'll pop up as you turn the camera away. But while we try and see and wait patiently for our hippo, I'm going to try and see if there isn't anything else that I can find. Now, Buffelshoek Dam is one of those dams you've got to be a little bit careful of. You don't want to end up getting too close to the water, because I don't trust the water here. It's definitely big enough to house some crocodiles like Boris the Blade or Vladimir the Impaler, so you'd be a little bit careful when you have to be close to water. Now, Jamie, you're wondering if there's ever been dangerous situations when it comes to the hippos. Well, I haven't personally had any dangerous situations with hippos here at Djuma. I think last year during the drought, 1 or 2 dangerous situations happened when the guys were on walk or tracking, but we'll have to ask James and Jamie when they were here on Djuma. In terms of dangerous situations with hippos, I had one once at Chitwa, which was, in hindsight, quite entertaining. Well, it must have been quite funny to watch, but every night at Chitwa, you'd take the guests back to their rooms and you'd escort them just in case any animals were around. At that stage, there were no fences around the camp, so we used to get lions and leopard and all kinds of things coming in and out. And now Chitwa has that really big dam. So the one evening I was walking 2 Brazilian guests that I had that didn't speak much English, and kind of making conversation, and I was talking quite loudly and I wasn't really paying attention to what was going on, and I dropped them off at their room. And as I came out and walked away from their room, I went over this small little bridge and came out on the other side, and this massive bull hippo was staring at me dead in the face. And unluckily for me, he was not very impressed with my presence and came rushing towards me. I had to dive underneath this small little wooden deck, and the hippo came off to my side and went barreling back towards the dam, and felt very, very lucky that there was a little bridge to hide under, because that hippo would have got me otherwise. So I have had that situation happen, which was not very pleasant at all, and one that I would not want to repeat. A hippo actually moves a lot faster than I would have thought they would, and that was a stark reminder to be very, very careful. And it's amazing at night how you just don't see them. I still had a flashlight, and as I was shining, I didn't see it until it kind of looked up and the eyes reflected back. Now, our hippos have been a bit naughty. They're staying underwater, so I think we're going to carry on and try and see if we can't negotiate this little thicket and rocky face. And while we do that, we don't want Dave to fall over holding the camera, so let's go back to James and see if he's got any stories about hippos to share with us.
James, Jamie, very easy names to get confused, so I'm clearly not James. I wish I had James's deeper bass. Well, maybe it would be a bit odd coming from my body, but you know, that wonderful soothing deep voice of his, or perhaps his vocabulary. But unfortunately, you'll have to stick with me for now. What was I going to tell you? I remember talking about hippopotamus and interesting moments with them. The story that always springs to my mind whenever we have questions about whether we've had any dangerous situations with hippo was years ago with my family. We were staying in a lodge on the Sand River, actually close to a confluence of a tributary of the Sand and the Sabi. And it was well known that hippo wandered about there at night, and everybody knew to be careful, but we fell into the complacency trap that a lot of South Africans fall into. And we were walking from our room to the restaurant to have dinner, and it was myself, obviously my father, my mother, and my little brother, who at the time I think must have been around about 12 or so. Difficult to remember. Anyway, to cut a very long story short, some very well-meaning people decided to tell us that there was a hippo right next to us by shining the light directly in our eyes and then shouting, "Be careful, the hippo," which of course served to startle both the hippo and us, and the Pattersons took off in different directions. I went behind a big tree. My father got the full force of the spotlight and stood there completely unable to see, blinking blindly, and completely unaware of the hippo, standing there going, "You idiots, there is no hippo," because he couldn't see it. The most impressive, though, was the sheer Olympic sprinter that my younger brother became. Now, Angus is not... How do I put this? I don't want to be mean at all. I don't mean to be mean, but he's not the sportiest creature in the world. But the turn of speed that he was capable of producing, and we always talk about don't run, and I'll get back to that in a second. The turn of speed that I saw from him that day had me convinced that he had a future as an Olympic sprinter. I have never seen anything move so fast in my entire life. But we always talk about the fact that you don't run, and you shouldn't run. My dad did absolutely the right thing, albeit accidentally. The The one thing you don't want to do, though, is get between a hippo and water, which is exactly what we were. Luckily for us, the hippo is so used to people blundering about in the dark that he wasn't fazed at all. Now, we were very fortunate in that regard, because it could have ended quite differently. But if you are on a hippopotamus path and you are between it and the water, get off the hippopotamus path and get away from being between the hippopotamus and water, because the water is their safe place and they'll go through you if they have to get there. And moving on from big hippopotamus, I'm on the search for big elephants. I have a feeling there's a herd lurking around here somewhere. There's fresh-ish tracks from this morning, probably just after the sunrise safari, and some freshish dung, and they're coming in this direction, and I think it's fresh enough that if the elephants weren't on a mission, they might still be around here. Ah, Deborah, the all-important question. Deborah would like to know, why is it that elephants can swim but hippopotamus can't? The fact that hippo can't swim isn't to do necessarily with their size, because obviously an elephant is much larger than a hippo. It's to do with the proportion of their legs to their body size and the way that they're structured, such that they can't really doggy paddle because their legs are so short compared to their somewhat stumpy bodies that doggy paddling doesn't really work for them. And I mean, we say they can't swim, they can't doggy paddle endlessly, but they can propel themselves beautifully through water without any difficulties. Elephants are really good swimmers, and they're one of the few animals, well, they have a trunk, so they can actually submerge themselves completely and have their trunk sticking out and breathe through that. And it's one of the reasons that's been put forward in terms of their evolutionary history as to why they might have been, at some point, had an ancestor that was aquatic, because they don't have that pleural space between the rib cage and the lung itself. So they don't have a pleural fluid space. The lungs are attached directly to the rib cage, and apparently that's meant to. Apparently they're meant to be. Sorry, there's somebody new who's just started guiding. It's just a voice that I don't know. Just in terms of coping with the pressure systems of breathing breathing underwater or maintaining that pressure underwater. Don't know, it's an interesting one. Their legs are also just so much longer than a hippopotamus that swimming's a lot easier. And they're very good swimmers and they love to swim, which is what I was hoping for this afternoon, because it's warm. I was hoping that we might have a herd of elephants somewhere at one of the waterholes. No such luck though. Not yet anyway. And if I don't win with the elephants and I don't win with the leopards, then I'm going to go and search for the hyenas. I want to know if they're still at that den site or not. We've all shared hippo stories this afternoon, Tristan, myself. It would be grossly unfair to leave James out, so let's hear an entertaining tale from him.
I don't think I have an entertaining hippo story. I have managed to fix Byron, though. He's looking okay now. Hello, Byron. He, of course, is about to be eaten by Tigger. Good. I've actually never been attacked by a hippopotamus, which was something of a relief. I will tell you, however, one story about it. Didn't include me, but it included a friend of mine who was assigned to a cameraman, I shall say not where, and in that Fergus will start giggling because he'll realise quite quickly who I'm talking about. A hippopotamus died. In fact, I think it was killed by, it may have been killed by lions. Anyway, it died near the water, and it then, or was hurt near the water, and it ended up in the water dead, basically. And this chap wanted to get a sort of PO view or point of view from the hippopotamus, because there were crocodiles feeding on the carcass. So what he did was second my mate and a leaky canoe, and he said, well, what we'll do is we'll get in the canoe, this is at night, go across to the hippopotamus, and you will film me standing on the hippo carcass as I film the crocodiles. And this is duly what they did. How they, I don't think the I don't think they got any pictures. I think that they were very lucky not to die. And eventually, what this chap was doing was filming the crocodiles approaching the hippopotamus from inside the cavity of the ribs. So that was quite a sort of a brave, strange way to approach filming a hippo carcass being devoured by crocodiles. My friend was scarred for life. Now, I do think that Jamie's being very unfair on a number of scores. Firstly, I think she has a very soothing voice. It might not be as deep as mine. I'm not sure how soothing mine is, but it is very soothing. And secondly, her brother, although he may not look like an Olympic athlete, indeed he does not, but nor do I, so I can say that, he is rather like Jamie, a very fine musician. And so you need to encourage Jamie, of course, to one day bring her flute out and play it for us. Ooh, that's very interesting. Siri, my telephone, just looked up soothing voice for some reason. I'm not sure why. Anyway, these are the seeds. these are the seeds of an unidentified flower that I found. And again, I was rather hoping for a beetle or something that may have dug into them. But it's like much of the rest of the things I've put under the microscope today, other than the gorgeous moths. This is a bit disappointing. Let's quickly go across to Ronald if we can. There's a three-banded plover there. There we go. That's much better. Three-banded plover. You can see that the terrapins have gone back into the water. They've gone foraging. Now, earlier today, and this is actually quite cool. I don't know if you were watching this morning. I'm just going to turn this slightly. If you were watching this morning, you may have seen Taylor. There we go. You may have seen Taylor on walk, and she found some snails underneath a leaf that she found at a pan or waterhole. I'm going to turn him back because he's not so good into the sun. And that is what something like that three-banded plover would eat. They eat snails, and it's exactly that sort of thing that they would eat. And, you know, I've never found snails like that before, and I've always wondered where they are. Okay, let's go to the dam camera now, where we have got the white-faced ducks, which we looked at today. We had a long discussion about the, well, unfortunate fate of probably 6 of the youngsters. Here we have only got 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6 left. And I think there were 13 at one stage. Anyway, they're in the company of a blacksmith lapwing that also would eat little marine invertebrates. Aquatic invertebrates. This is not the sea, is it, Fergus? No, it is a small dam, a long way away from the sea. Anyway, the ducks are having a snooze. You can see they're having an afternoon ziz while Mum and Dad talk to each other about the trials of raising children. And the little ducklings have tucked their little beaks underneath their wings and are having a little afternoon ziz. I've never seen that before. That's very cute. They're just delivering a couple of lessons to the older ones about bathing and preening, and trying to get them to go to sleep too so that they can have some adult time. But like most children, of course, they have no desire to leave the adults to themselves. They want to join in on the conversation. I think that's very cute. Very nice. All right, I believe that Jamie is having an enormous amount of success. Of course, we found an almost insurmountable number of large predatory cats, huge numbers of elephants all over the place, buffalo, kudu, giraffe, you name it, every high-profile species of animal that you can think of we've found in the last 4 drives, and Jamie is just continuing with that spectacular luck.
What can I say? The luck has just been so very extraordinary that sometimes I just have to stop at the little things and remind myself that they exist out here too. Now, we might not have a big 5-member for you, but we've got a small 5-member, which is equally exciting. Well, it's exciting, nevertheless. This is a red-billed buffalo weaver, or several red-billed buffalo weavers. And of course, they are one of the small 5. The small 5, of course, being the smaller creatures out here that have some passing resemblance to the name of well, not even a passing resemblance, they actually have the name in their title of one of the Big Five members. Big Five, of course, being a truly outdated term for lion, leopard, buffalo, elephant and rhino, and hence the buffalo weavers being a member of the small five. So there we go. That's not too bad. We found buffalo and buffalo weavers this afternoon, and the afternoon is not yet over. I actually, honestly, truly find watching buffalo weavers fascinating, especially when they're building their nests, which they're not really as dedicated to at the moment. It's not breeding season, but they do constantly add to their very, very messy... What have you got there? They do constantly add to their very messy structures that they love to build around antennas, repeaters, dead trees, all sorts of places. But they are not a bird that you would like to have building a nest in camp, and that's because they like to use thorn trees. And indirectly, a buffalo weaver was responsible for a friend of mine. To say that she nearly lost her foot is probably a bit dramatic, but she did get a really truly serious infection. She did like to run around barefoot, but because the buffalo weavers were building their nest in the tree above our lawn, they would often drop the thorny sticks down, and my friend Emma jumped on one, went up into her heel, obviously hit the bone because it was a sicklebush branch or a leadwood branch. It was a hard piece of wood, and as a result she ended up on a massive course of 2 different types of antibiotics. Her foot swelled up to double its size in less than 12 hours. She was in absolute agony, and when she went to the doctor said she was, if it didn't go down within a few days, she was going to have surgery. It gave her a really, really nasty infection. So there you go. Buffalo weavers are just as dangerous as buffalo. That's a stretch even for me. Well, I hope I saw another small animal. Oh, brilliant. John in Colorado has obviously been building up his bird's nest, and John in Colorado said that a buffalo weaver, red-billed buffalo weaver, is number 97. Did I get that right, Kirst? 97 for John. Well done, John. 3 more and you get 100. What are you missing? Do you think we can get John to 100 before the end of the sunset safari? I think we could. Alright, apparently my mongoose was an imagined one, because I don't see them and I don't hear them. So I didn't find you another small creature, not yet anyway. Alright, John. 3 to go. I think we should try and make it a century this afternoon. See if I can find you something more unusual that you're unlikely to have. I'm 1 step behind these elephants. I'm still dedicated though. I'm still going to try and find them. While I do, let's go and see if Tristan's had any more luck at Buffelshoek Dam.
Well, we haven't, Jamie. We unfortunately have not found any further signs of these leopards. There was some tracks around Buffelshoek Dam, but on closer inspection they look like they were from yesterday or last night and are not as fresh as the tracks that we saw. So, unfortunately, our leopard hunt is starting to come to a close because the sun is starting to dip down, and so tracking leopards on foot in the dark is not the best option. But what we've come to is a beautiful, gorgeous tree that is over Buffelshoek Dam, known as a torchwood tree. And this is a tree that gives Brent Leo Smith a few nightmares. For those of you who are not aware of what happened with Brent, is that Brent tried to show everybody a torchwood tree, climbed up it, and ended up falling out of the tree in a massive heap at the bottom. How he didn't break anything, I'm still not convinced. He fell from quite a dizzying height and got really, really hurt. But what is noticeable is if we look around me here, is first of all you'll see that there is a big pile of elephant dung, which is not uncommon under a torchwood tree. Torchwoods often provide a nice amount of shade, but you'll see that there are lots of sort of fruits that look like they've been squashed. Now these fruits are all from a torchwood tree themselves, so if we have a look here, I'll pick one up that's hopefully not squashed already. Oh, it looks like it might be a little bit, but here we go. This is a little torchwood fruit, and this is what the elephants would be after. So the elephants would come out to come and start eating these. Now, we've had mixed reports about these, and actually Taylor and I have discussed it, and she was saying that she's heard that they can be poisonous, and she's not sure if it's the fruit or the actual seed. Now, if I tear it open, you'll see that it's got a very sticky, sort of pasty kind of fruit. It's almost date-like in its appearance, but it has this very funny smell. It almost smells like, I don't know what the word is for it. Dave says to me it smells a bit like old jam, but I'm not sure that's the right thing, Dave. But it's got quite a pungent smell, and the taste is not great either. It almost tastes a little bit like paint. It's not very, very pleasant at all. So I don't think this will kill you, because I have eaten them before and it should be fine. And I actually had a tracker who used to eat them like they were sweets. He used to just shove them in, and he was also just fine for many years. So it must be in the nut itself. But the reason it gets this torchwood name is because of the properties of burning. So this nut, if you press it, you'll get an oil out of it that does burn for a long period of time. And so what they used to do is take the branch, and they would then wrap it with the bark and put that oil from the nut on, and they would then light it, and they used to use it as a primitive torch. They used to walk around with it and negotiate the darkness with this torchwood tree, which is quite something. It is also quite an interesting tree in that it generally is one of my favorites just from a beauty point of view. Now, Kirsty's saying I think I should eat one of the fruits. Well, Kirsty, if I eat one of the fruits, then I think I will bring for you to eat, and you'll have to eat a whole one, because they are delightfully delicious, and hopefully you'll enjoy them with me. And so what we'll do is I'll bring them back to camp, and we can eat them together, and we'll film it, and then we can post it later. So Kirst says a deal. So I'll have to harvest some fruits for her, and we'll do it a little bit later. Now you can hear our hippos are in agreement. Kirst, I think the hippos think that's a fine idea to watch you eat one of these. And all has gone quiet now as well. You can hear they've all kind of had their say. And it's that time of the day where we're going to start hearing the hippos start to vocalize and to call. And they're going to start thinking about coming out for their evening shenanigans and moving around. And it's interesting to see how many hippos we are getting at Buffelshoek Dam. More and more and more are starting to arrive, and hopefully we'll get a really nice big pod that will end up staying here, and we'll have lots of hippos and even maybe some little babies, because there's nothing cuter than a baby hippo. I know we had that baby at Chitwa Dam earlier in the year, but hopefully we'll get one here on Buffelshoek Dam that we can find and see it spending time on the shores. But other than that, it really is a very, very picturesque evening. Oh, Stefan, this is an interesting question. You're wondering if hippos turn cannibalistic when under dietary pressure. So like last year when we had that drought period and there was very little food available for hippos, would they then consider eating meat? Well, in my experience, no. I've never seen hippos actually physically swallowing bits of meat. I've seen them inspecting carcasses often, where they've gone up and they've used their mouths and they've toyed with meat and picked it up and sort of smelt it and tasted it, but they've not actually swallowed any. I don't think their digestive system would be able to cope with the vast amount of protein that they end up getting out of a carcass. So no, I've never seen them do it, but I would imagine in severe drought times, maybe they would be desperate enough to do it. Last year we didn't actually see any of that behavior. We saw hippos dying more than actually trying to find carcasses. We had a number of dead buffalo all over the place that many hippos actually walked past and sniffed, but they didn't actually take any bites out of. So I don't think they would actually feed on meat. I think it's pretty much a vegetarian lifestyle for them, and so they'll try and avoid it as much as possible. Now, we're going to leave our wallowing hippos to themselves and probably get onto a vehicle so that we can carry on our afternoon and do the school drive a little bit later. So while we do that, let's go across to James, who's going to be in the tent, or actually he's not in the tent, he's lying in some long grass apparently. So let's go see what he's up to.
I'm just breathless